Welcome to Sleepy Stories, the place where stories aren't meant to be finished. I'm Arthur, and tonight I'll be reading you a relaxing, sleepy story written by Pumby. Tonight we find ourselves wandering through the enchanting streets of Paris on a gentle rainy evening. Let the soft patter of raindrops and the warm glow of street lights carry you into a state of peaceful tranquility. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop, and allow yourself to drift into this calming urban sanctuary. The first drops begin to fall as you step onto the cobblestones of Rue de Rivoli, each one catching the amber light from the vintage street lamps that line this timeless Parisian thoroughfare. The rain starts as merely a whisper against the old stone buildings, a gentle percussion that seems to synchronise perfectly with your unhurried footsteps. You pull your light jacket closer, not from cold, but from the comforting embrace that only a warm summer rain can provide. The city transforms before your eyes as the evening shower intensifies just enough to create that distinctive urban symphony. Water trickles down the ornate iron balconies above, creating tiny waterfalls that splash softly onto the sidewalk below. The sound is rhythmic, almost musical, as if the entire city has become a vast instrument being played by nature herself. You pause beneath the shelter of a centuries-old archway, watching as pedestrians emerge from doorways with colourful umbrellas that bloom like flowers against the grey evening sky. From your vantage point, you observe how the rain has painted the streets with a glossy sheen, reflecting the warm yellow glow of cafe windows and the soft blue light emanating from small boutiques still open for the evening. Each reflection wavers and dances as new raindrops disturb the surface, creating an ever-changing canvas of light and shadow that seems to pulse with the heartbeat of the city. A gentle breeze carries the scent of wet stone mixed with the aroma of fresh bread from a nearby boulangerie. The baker inside moves slowly behind steamed windows, kneading tomorrow's loaves with practiced, meditative movements. You watch as he shapes the dough with careful precision, his actions as rhythmic and soothing as the rain itself. The warm light spilling from his shop creates a golden rectangle on the wet pavement, inviting and comforting in the gathering dusk. You continue your leisurely stroll, your pace naturally slowing to match the tranquil mood that has settled over the neighbourhood. The rain has encouraged an intimate atmosphere where conversations become softer, footsteps gentler, and the usual urban urgency melts away like sugar in warm tea. Couples walk closer together under shared umbrellas, their quiet laughter mixing with the gentle splash of water from passing bicycle wheels. The Seine comes into view as you turn down a narrow side street, its surface dotted with countless tiny circles where raindrops meet the dark water. A few brave souls still occupy the cafe terraces, now covered with clear plastic canopies that create cosy, greenhouse-like spaces. The soft clink of coffee cups and the murmur of conversation drift out into the evening air, blending seamlessly with the natural soundtrack of the rain. You find yourself drawn to pause at the stone balustrade overlooking the river, watching as the historic bridges stretch across the water like sleeping giants. The Pont Neuf appears almost ethereal through the veil of rain, its ancient stones darkened by moisture, but somehow made more beautiful, more substantial. Barges drift slowly beneath, their lights creating long wavering reflections that stretch and compress with the gentle movement of the current. The air feels clean and fresh, washed by the rain and carrying hints of the river and the countless small gardens tucked away behind the elegant Haussmannian buildings. You breathe deeply, feeling your lungs fill with this purified atmosphere, each breath seeming to wash away the accumulated tension of busy days and restless nights. A small bookshop catches your attention, its windows glowing warmly against the deepening evening. Through the rain-streaked glass you can see towering shelves packed with volumes, and an elderly proprietor arranging books with the careful attention of someone who understands that each one contains entire worlds A cat sleeps curled on the windowsill, oblivious to the weather, its gentle breathing creating tiny patches of fog on the glass that appear and disappear in a hypnotic rhythm. The rain begins to ease slightly as you continue your meandering journey, shifting from steady drops to a fine mist that seems to hover in the air like a soft, embracing cloud. This gentler precipitation creates halos around the street lamps and gives the entire scene a dreamlike quality, as if you've stepped into an impressionist painting where the edges of reality blur and soften. You pass a small plaza where a fountain continues its eternal dance, now accompanied by raindrops that create expanding rings on the water's surface. The sound of falling water mingles with falling rain until it becomes impossible to distinguish between the two, creating a layered symphony of liquid music that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. The windows of the apartments above begin to glow with warm, honey-coloured light as residents settle in for the evening. You catch glimpses of peaceful domestic scenes through sheer curtains, someone reading by a window, the silhouette of a person preparing dinner, the soft movement of someone tending to plants on a small balcony garden. These intimate moments, partially revealed and partially hidden, create a sense of gentle voyeurism that feels more like sharing in the collective tranquility of the evening rather than intruding upon private lives. A small cafe comes into view, its outdoor seating area now empty, except for tables and chairs that glisten with raindrops like scattered diamonds. The interior appears warm and inviting, with soft lighting that spills out onto the wet pavement. Through the windows, you can see patrons sitting quietly with books or engaged in gentle conversation, their faces lit by the warm glow of table lamps. The scene suggests stories being told, thoughts being shared, and moments being savoured at exactly the pace they deserve. The rain continues its gentle work, washing the city clean and creating an atmosphere of renewal and calm. Each drop seems purposeful, contributing to a greater design that transforms the urban landscape into something softer, more intimate, more conducive to reflection and rest. The usual sharp edges of city life have been rounded and smoothed by this liquid benediction, creating spaces for contemplation and peace within the heart of one of the world's most vibrant cities. As you walk, your own breathing naturally synchronizes with the rhythm of the rain, creating a meditative state where each step forward feels like a conscious choice to embrace the present moment. The wet streets ahead stretch invitingly into the gentle darkness, promising more quiet discoveries and peaceful encounters in this rain-blessed corner of Paris. The gentle mist now caresses your face as you venture deeper into the labyrinthine streets of the Marais district, where centuries-old buildings lean slightly toward each other, as if sharing whispered secrets accumulated over generations. The rain has softened to barely more than a breath, yet its presence remains palpable in the way it transforms every surface into something more luminous, more alive with reflected light. You find yourself on a narrow cobblestone passage where the sound of your footsteps creates a soft, irregular rhythm against the worn stones. Each cobble has been polished smooth by countless feet over hundreds of years, and now the rain adds another layer of patina, making them gleam like scattered coins in the lamplight. The passage curves gently ahead, disappearing into shadows that seem inviting rather than mysterious, promising quiet revelations around each bend. A small courtyard opens unexpectedly to your left, accessible through an archway so old its stones have been worn smooth by weather and time. Within this hidden space, rain collects in a shallow basin at the centre, creating concentric ripples that spread outward in perfect hypnotic circles. Ivy cascades down the surrounding walls in waterlogged curtains, its leaves darkened to deep emerald by the moisture. The courtyard feels like a secret room in the city's vast house, a place where time moves differently and thoughts can unfold at their natural pace. Through tall windows that overlook this courtyard, warm light reveals glimpses of evening life unfolding in slow motion. A woman waters plants on her windowsill, her movements deliberate and caring as she tends each pot with individual attention. In another window, someone practices piano, the muted melody drifting down to mix with the gentle percussion of raindrops on leaves. The music is simple, perhaps scales or a familiar nocturne, but played with such tenderness that it seems to harmonise perfectly with the evening's natural soundtrack. You continue through the passage, emerging onto a wider street where small galleries and antique shops display their treasures behind rain-streaked windows. Each storefront tells its own story through carefully arranged objects. Vintage cameras that once captured forgotten moments, leather-bound books whose pages hold decades of marginalia, porcelain figures that have witnessed countless changes of season from their perches on display shelves. The rain seems to add another layer of history to these already storied objects, as if each drop carries with it memories from other rainy evenings in other decades. A patisserie draws your attention with its warm, golden glow, and the faint aroma of almond and vanilla that somehow penetrates even the rain-washed air. Through the window, you observe the careful artistry of evening preparations. Delicate macarons arranged in precise rows, tarts glazed to mirror-like perfection, croissants shaped with the patience that comes from years of practice. The pastry chef moves with ballet-like grace, each gesture economical and purposeful, creating edible poetry in a space that feels more like a sanctuary than a shop. The rain intensifies again, but only slightly, creating a more pronounced rhythm as it strikes the canvas awnings stretched over doorways and the metal cafe chairs stacked for the evening. This renewed precipitation brings with it a deeper sense of enclosure, as if the city is drawing its curtains against the world beyond, creating an intimate space where only the essential remains visible and audible. You pass beneath a series of connected archways, each one framing the next like a telescope, focused on some distant, peaceful destination. The rain echoes differently under each arch, creating subtle variations in tone and resonance that suggest the age and composition of the stones above. Some arches carry the rain sound with crystal clarity, while others muffle and soften it, creating a natural symphony hall where every step forward reveals new acoustic properties. A small church appears through the mist, its spire disappearing into the low-hanging clouds that seem to rest on the city's rooftops like a soft grey blanket. The building's facade is darkened by rain, but this only serves to highlight the intricate carvings around its doorway and windows. Water trickles down the grooved surfaces of stone saints and angels, giving them the appearance of gentle tears that speak not of sorrow, but of a deep, abiding peace that has weathered centuries of storms. The narrow streets begin to wind more frequently now, creating a maze-like quality that encourages slower movement and closer attention to detail. Each turn reveals new intimate vignettes, a bicycle leaning against a lamppost, its basket filled with flowers that nod heavy-headed under their burden of raindrops. A small dog peering contentedly from beneath a cafe table, perfectly dry and seemingly amused by the humans hurrying past with their umbrellas and upturned collars. You discover a tiny square dominated by a single, ancient tree whose broad canopy has created a natural shelter. Beneath its protective branches, a few cafe tables remain occupied by patrons who seem in no hurry to seek indoor refuge. They sit quietly with their coffee and wine, occasionally glancing up at the rain with expressions of appreciation rather than annoyance. Their conversation is subdued, respectful of the evening's contemplative mood, and their laughter, when it comes, is soft and warm like the light from the nearby cafe windows. The rain continues to work its transformation on everything it touches, turning ordinary surfaces into mirrors, making colours more saturated, and creating an atmosphere where even the most familiar urban elements seem touched by magic. Street signs become impressionist paintings, their letters slightly blurred but somehow more beautiful for the softening. Building facades reveal textures and patterns previously hidden, now highlighted by the way water flows along mortar lines and architectural details. As you walk deeper into this rain-blessed evening, the boundaries between inside and outside, between public and private, between past and present, seem to dissolve like watercolours running together on wet paper. The city becomes a living entity that breathes with the rhythm of rainfall, sighs with the whisper of tyres on wet pavement, and dreams with the gentle glow of windows that promise warmth and rest for all who seek them. The gentle mist now wraps around you like a silk scarf as you venture onto the Ile Saint-Louis, where the Seine flows on both sides, creating an island of tranquility within the already peaceful city. The rain has evolved into something even more ethereal. Droplets so fine they seem to float rather than fall, suspended in the evening air like tiny pearls of liquid light. Each breath you take tastes of clean stone and river water, purified by nature's own distillation process. Your footsteps echo softly against the wet quay as you walk along the water's edge, where ancient stone walls rise directly from the river, like the foundations of some magnificent castle. The rain creates countless tiny fountains where it meets the Seine, each drop sending out concentric circles that intersect and overlap in patterns too complex and beautiful to fully comprehend. A barge glides silently past, its warm cabin lights creating golden streaks across the dark water, while somewhere in its depths you imagine someone preparing evening tea, perhaps reading by a small window. Completely content in their floating sanctuary, the island's narrow streets welcome you with their intimate scale, where buildings seem to embrace each other across the narrow passages, their upper floors nearly touching overhead. Rain trickles down the ancient gutters and downspouts, creating a network of tiny waterfalls that cascade from balcony to balcony before finally reaching the cobblestones below. The sound is delicate, almost musical, like fingers trailing across piano keys in no particular pattern, yet somehow creating perfect harmony. You pause before a small hotel whose facade glows warmly through the misty evening air. Through its tall windows, you glimpse a wood-panelled lobby where a fire crackles in an ornate fireplace, casting dancing shadows on walls lined with old paintings and books. A few guests sit in leather armchairs, some reading, others simply gazing into the flames with expressions of deep contentment. The scene radiates such peaceful satisfaction that you feel your own breathing slow to match their relaxed rhythm. A narrow alleyway beckons, barely wide enough for two people to pass comfortably, its walls rising so high on either side that only a thin ribbon of grey sky remains visible overhead. The rain here feels more intimate, each drop seeming to choose its path deliberately down the weathered stones. Puddles form in the slight depressions between cobblestones, creating natural mirrors that reflect the warm light spilling from doorways and ground floor windows. The alley opens into a small garden courtyard where rain has awakened every growing thing into a symphony of fresh scents. Lavender bushes release their perfume into the moist air, while roses heavy with water drops nod gracefully from their carefully tended beds. A small fountain continues its eternal conversation with the rain, the two water sources creating harmonies and counter melodies that seem to shift and develop as you listen. Stone benches invite contemplation, their surfaces darkened by moisture, but somehow made more beautiful, more substantial by the rain's caress. Through the garden's iron gates you observe the ritual of evening preparation taking place in the apartments above. Windows glow like warm amber jewels against the grey backdrop of rain clouds, each one offering glimpses of peaceful domestic scenes. In one window, someone arranges flowers in a vase, their movements slow and deliberate as they consider each stem's perfect placement. Another window reveals the silhouette of a person preparing dinner, chopping vegetables with the unhurried precision of someone who understands that cooking, like rain, cannot be rushed to achieve its full beauty. You continue through streets that seem to grow narrower and more intimate with each turn, as if the city is gradually revealing its most treasured secrets to those patient enough to walk slowly through its rain-washed evening. The buildings here are older, their stones worn smooth by centuries of weather, their doorways crowned with carved lintels that speak of craftsmen who worked when time moved differently, when each detail deserved hours of careful attention. A small bookbindery appears through the mist, its workshop window revealing shelves lined with leather-bound volumes in various stages of restoration. The craftsman inside works by the light of a green-shaded lamp, his hands moving with practiced gentleness as he repairs a spine or resews a signature. The rain patters against his window, like a gentle reminder that outside the world continues its own work of renewal and restoration, washing away what is no longer needed and preparing the ground for what is yet to come. The rain intensifies slightly as you enter the Latin Quarter, where narrow medieval streets wind between buildings that seem to lean forward conspiratorially, their upper stories creating natural shelters from the weather. Water flows in thin streams along the gutters, carrying fallen leaves and flower petals in a slow parade toward the Seine. The sound of your footsteps mingles with the gentle splash of water from downspouts and the occasional whisper of bicycle wheels on wet pavements. A small cafe appears around a corner, its windows glowing warmly against the grey evening. Inside, patrons sit at marble-topped tables, their faces lit by the soft light of vintage fixtures. Steam rises from coffee cups and mingles with the condensation on windows, creating an atmosphere of perfect enclosure where the outside world exists only as a gentle percussion of rain against glass. The barista moves with unhurried grace, each espresso prepared with the careful attention of a craftsman who understands that some things cannot be rushed. You pass beneath a series of stone archways that connect one ancient building to another, creating covered passages where the rain's sound echoes and resonates in different tones depending on the age and composition of the stones above. Some passages carry the rain's rhythm with crisp clarity, while others muffle and transform it into something deeper, more resonant, like the sound of distant thunder or the breathing of some benevolent giant. The streets begin to slope gently downward toward the river, and with each step you feel yourself descending not just physically, but into deeper layers of calm, as if the city's elevation corresponds directly to states of consciousness. The rain here seems more purposeful, each drop contributing to streams that flow between cobblestones toward ancient drains that have carried away centuries of Parisian rainfall. A small square opens before you, dominated by a fountain whose baroque figures seem to dance even more gracefully in the rain. Water cascades from tier to tier, while raindrops create expanding circles on the pool's surface, the two water sources creating a complex rhythm that seems to speak in a language older than words. Cafe tables under awnings remain occupied by a few dedicated souls who sip wine and watch the rain with expressions of deep appreciation, as if witnessing a performance they have been waiting all day to see. The mist thickens as evening deepens, creating an atmosphere where distances become uncertain and familiar landmarks take on dreamlike qualities. Buildings fade in and out of visibility, like memories surfacing and submerging in consciousness. Street lamps create pools of golden light that seem to float in the misty air, connected by shadows that shift and change with each gust of rain-laden breeze. You discover a narrow passage between buildings where ivy has grown so thick it creates a natural tunnel, its leaves heavy with accumulated moisture that drips steadily onto the stone path below. The sound here is different, softer, more organic, as if you are walking through a green cave where nature has temporarily claimed dominion over the urban landscape. The air smells of earth and growing things, of rain-washed leaves and the peculiar freshness that comes only after a thorough cleansing by weather. Emerging from the ivy tunnel, you find yourself on a wider boulevard where plane trees create a natural cathedral, their branches interlacing overhead to form Gothic arches that frame the grey sky beyond. Rain filters through the canopy in irregular patterns, some areas receiving steady drops while others remain mysteriously dry despite the open sky above. The interplay of wet and dry surfaces creates a complex visual texture that changes constantly as wind shifts the branches and alters the patterns of protection and exposure. A small cinema appears through the rain, its vintage marquee announcing films in elegant script that seems to blur and shimmer in the moisture-laden air. Through the lobby windows, you glimpse red velvet seats and golden fixtures, a space where stories unfold in darkness while outside, the rain writes its own narrative across the city's ancient surfaces. The ticket booth glows warmly, occupied by an elderly attendant who seems content to watch the evening unfold through rain-streaked glass, perhaps understanding that sometimes the most beautiful performances happen not on screen, but in the gentle theatre of weather and time. The rain continues its patient work of transformation, turning every surface into something more luminous, more alive with reflected light and accumulated moisture. Doorways become galleries of light and shadow. Windows transform into impressionist paintings, where the boundaries between inside and outside blur like watercolours running together on wet paper. The city breathes with the rhythm of rainfall, sighs with the whisper of water flowing toward the Seine, and dreams with the gentle glow of windows that promise warmth and rest for all who seek them in this rain-blessed corner of eternal Paris. Paris. As you wander deeper into the heart of Montmartre, the rain takes on an almost mystical quality, each droplet seeming to carry with it fragments of the countless stories that have unfolded on these winding cobblestone streets. The mist swirls around the base of ancient lampposts, creating ethereal spirals that rise and dissipate like incense from some invisible altar dedicated to the evening's quiet reverence. Your path curves upward now, following streets that seem to fold back upon themselves in gentle spirals, as if the neighbourhood itself understands that the journey matters more than any particular destination. The rain has polished the cobblestones to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting not just the warm light from cafe windows and street lamps, but something deeper, the accumulated glow of centuries of similar evenings, when other wanderers sought the same unhurried peace you now discover with each deliberate step. A small vineyard appears impossibly between buildings, its ancient vines heavy with rain-darkened leaves that rustle with the gentlest whisper as droplets accumulate and fall in their own natural rhythm. The sight seems almost magical in this urban setting, as if the city has decided to reveal one of its most treasured secrets to those patient enough to walk slowly through its rain-washed evening. Wooden posts support the vines in neat rows that disappears into the mist, creating perspective lines that draw your eye towards some peaceful vanishing point, where earth meets sky in perfect grey harmony. Through the vineyard's modest fence you observe a small cottage where golden light spills from diamond-paned windows onto a garden where herbs release their rain-awakened fragrances into the evening air. Rosemary and thyme, sage and lavender create an olfactory symphony that mingles with the clean scent of wet stone and the distant aroma of bread baking in some nearby kitchen. The combination is intoxicating in its simplicity, a reminder that the most profound pleasures often come disguised as the most ordinary moments. You continue along a path that seems to have been designed by rain itself, following the natural contours of the hill as water seeks its own level. Each turn reveals new intimate vignettes. A cat sitting perfectly dry beneath a cafe table, watching raindrops, with the philosophical detachment of someone who has learned that weather, like life, is best observed rather than resisted. An elderly man feeding pigeons from a paper bag, the birds unperturbed by the gentle precipitation as they gather around his feet in a scene of such peaceful communion that time seems to pause in respect. The rain intensifies slightly as you approach Sacré-Cœur, its white domes emerging from the mist like thoughts surfacing from deep meditation. The basilica's steps glisten with accumulated moisture, creating natural waterfalls that flow in thin streams toward the streets below. Even in the rain, or perhaps especially in the rain, the building radiates a sense of permanence and peace, as if it has been waiting patiently through countless such evenings, offering shelter not just from weather, but from the accumulated weight of busy days and restless nights. A small artist's studio catches your attention, its windows glowing warmly against the grey evening air. Inside, canvases lean against walls, like sleeping thoughts waiting to be awakened, while brushes rest in jars of cloudy water that catches and reflects the lamplight in constantly shifting patterns. The artist works slowly at an easel, adding careful touches of colour to what appears to be a painting of rain-washed streets, remarkably similar to the ones you now traverse. The scene creates a moment of perfect circularity, as if art and life are engaged in an eternal conversation about beauty and meaning. You descend now through narrower streets, where buildings lean so close together, their eaves nearly touch, creating natural canopies that filter the rain into intricate patterns of drops and dry spaces. The sound here becomes more complex, a layered composition where water striking different surfaces creates harmonies and counter-melodies that seem to respond to your footsteps, like some ancient call and response ritual between walker and weather. A small patisserie appears through the mist, its windows fogged with warmth and displaying an array of evening pastries that seem to glow with their own inner light. Eclairs glazed to mirror perfection reflect the street lamps in their surfaces, while tarte aux pommes, arranged in precise rows, create geometric patterns that please the eye with their mathematical precision. The baker inside moves with the unhurried grace of someone who understands that creation cannot be rushed, each gesture deliberate and purposeful, as rain continues its own patient work of renewal outside. The streets begin to level as you approach the banks of the Seine once more, the river's presence felt even before it becomes visible through the mist. The rain here takes on a different quality, somehow softer and more melodic, as if proximity to flowing water teaches even precipitation new songs. Puddles form in the slight depressions between cobblestones, creating natural mirrors that reflect the warm light from riverside cafes and the occasional glow of a passing boat's lantern. Through the evening haze you glimpse the silhouettes of couples walking slowly along the quay, their umbrellas creating intimate shelters that move through the mist like colourful flowers floating on an invisible current. Their pace matches your own, unhurried, contemplative, as if they too have discovered that rain transforms the familiar city into something more mysterious, more conducive to quiet conversation and shared silences. A bookseller's stall appears beside the river, its green boxes somehow still open despite the weather, protected by an ingenious system of canvas covers that allow browsing while keeping the volumes dry. The seller sits patiently beneath a large umbrella, occasionally turning pages of his own book, seemingly content to let the rain determine the evening's rhythm of customers and solitude. His presence adds to the scene's timeless quality, as if he has been there through countless rainy evenings, a guardian of stories waiting to be discovered by those wise enough to seek them in weather that keeps the hurried indoors. You pause at a stone balustrade overlooking the Seine, watching as raindrops create expanding circles on the river's dark surface. Each drop seems to carry its own small story, spreading outward in perfect rings before disappearing into the larger current that flows towards some distant sea. Barges pass like floating islands of warm light, their windows revealing glimpses of evening life lived at river pace, unhurried, purposeful, in harmony with the natural rhythms of water and weather. The rain continues its gentle benediction, transforming every surface it touches into something more luminous, more alive with possibility. Street signs become impressionist paintings, their letters softly blurred but somehow more beautiful for the softening. Building facades reveal previously hidden textures and patterns now highlighted by the way water flows along architectural details and mortar lines. creating temporary rivers that exist only for as long as the rain chooses to sustain them. As darkness deepens and street lamps begin to dominate the illumination, the rain-washed city takes on an even more dreamlike quality. Distances become uncertain. Familiar landmarks appear and disappear through veils of mist like memories, surfacing and submerging in consciousness. The boundary between waking and sleeping, between the physical city and the city of dreams, begins to blur like watercolours running together on wet paper. Your footsteps echo softly against wet stone as you continue this endless, peaceful journey through rain-blessed Paris, where every drop that falls seems to whisper the same gentle message. That beauty lies not in destinations, but in the quality of attention we bring to each moment, each breath, each step along the way. The rain will continue long after you have found your rest, washing the city clean for tomorrow's discoveries, preparing the ancient streets for new stories yet to be written in the eternal dialogue between weather and stone, between solitude and the quietly beating heart of this most patient, most beautiful of cities. And so your gentle wandering through the rain-soaked streets of Paris draws to its natural close, though like all the best journeys, this one leaves you changed in ways both subtle and profound. You have walked through centuries of history written in wet stone, witnessed the quiet poetry of ordinary moments transformed by falling rain, and discovered that sometimes the most beautiful destinations are the ones we create simply by choosing to move slowly through the world. The rain continues its patient work as you find your way toward rest, each drop a small blessing that will echo in your dreams, long after the last street light has faded from view. In this rain-washed corner of eternal Paris, you have learned what the city's stones have always known, that peace is not a place we arrive at, but a rhythm we allow ourselves to fall into, gentle as rainfall, constant as breath. Let the memory of cobblestones gleaming in lamplight, of cafe windows glowing warmly against grey skies, of water writing temporary stories on ancient surfaces, carry you now into the deepest, most restful sleep. For in the end, the most beautiful stories are not the ones that reach dramatic conclusions, but those that simply dissolve, like raindrops into the river, into the vast, peaceful current of dreams where all journeys continue without end. Sleep well, dear listener, and may your own dreams be filled with the gentle patter of rain on quiet streets, leading you always toward the peace that waits patiently in the heart of every moment, in every breath, in every step along the way.